Hey, everybody. Good evening or good morning, depending on where you are in the world, because I do have international subscribers. Welcome to New Ideas, formerly the Politically Homeless podcast. And I'm your host, Nevin, and with me is a very good friend of mine, quite literally, an old friend of mine from my undergraduate years at SUNY Albany. His name is Rich Lupia. He is formerly a TV meteorologist. So yes, we have another celebrity on the program here today. He is also a self-published author. He is a husband and a father. He is a Christian believer. He's a great guy, a lot of fun, a lot of talents. And today, Rich is joining us to talk about um, Unseen Hand of God, A Journey of Faith, Family, and Second Chances. Now, I've known Rich since 1993, so it's quite a long time. This is not going to be generally a political podcast. I know that is incredibly shocking because all I talk about is geopolitics, history, economics. Rich is the first non-political guest. Rich, by the way, a little fun trivia about politics, not about Rich's, and we're not going to discuss that. Mine,
Thanks.
Rich remembers back in the day when I was a stalwart Reagan Republican with very free market fundamentalist views. So if anything, people don't believe me. Now I've become a radical civic nationalist, which is a mixture of different views. Rich can confirm here that I used to be a die-hard Republican, thought the liberals were the cause of all the problems in the United States of America and everything else. Can you confirm or deny before we start the podcast?
Well, I cannot deny that, but anyway, Gorbachev, tear down this wall. Pretty much that's about who you were. And during the 1990s, you were about as stalwart of a Republican and as stalwart of a Reagan guy as I knew. And that's one of the reasons why I loved you, particularly during that time, particularly during the Clinton years, as it seemed like the country was going completely in the other direction, and basically it had done that until we came back to G.W. Bush in 2000 and in 2004.
Right.
And then basically back to 2016 and Trump, and back to Trump now in 2024, which is the best that we have done in 20 years, if not even more so than that. If not in 20 years, then even going back to the 1980s. So I just am amazed at what's happened in this country, the back and forth, the on and off, and just where we are right now today. I'm amazed at how positive everything is looking at the future, and I'm very positive about the future for America, and I'm very thankful for that, and I'm very thankful to be a part of that. And thank you so much, Nevin, for having me on this podcast. And I am looking so forward to talking about Unseen Hand of God and my journey through the 1990s, the 2000s, and the 2010s, which is described in that book.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there were many things that kind of united you and I, Rich. Not only politics, and still my roots are in the right, obviously. My politics have evolved, but a lot of it came through the fact that I still like what I believe are right-wing goals, which are strong families, which is strong national security, and a thriving free enterprise system with obviously certain limitations, which I've come to accept. So, we are in certain ways cut out of the same cloth. We want the same things. I still love you, even though you're still a stalwart Republican. I still love you. Obviously, you revealed your politics, and that's all good. We could have an endless discussion about that.
No, that's okay. That's okay. That's who I am, and I'm a born again Christian and have been for 31 plus years. It'll be 32 years next February. Just praise God for that, and praise God for my wife and for my kids and for everything that He's blessed me with.
Yeah, yeah. Rich and I have a lot in common, and born again Christians on this program, we're a big tent. We embrace everybody, every American of goodwill and good faith. Um, and I go from there. I got friends, colleagues all across the spectrum of all shapes and sizes, religions, genders, you name it. There you go. So, well, another thing that united Rich and I was also not only our personalities and some of our intellectual interests, but one intellectual interest was some of the sciences, including weather. So Rich is going to talk about, how he's grown to, embrace one of his life passions, weather. So we're going to start off. We're going to talk about this book. We'll probably have different segments of this in the next coming weeks or months. Rich, the old question I'm going to ask you: who, what, where, and why? Where were you born? Tell us about your childhood, how you came to become who you are, in your younger years when you're a kid and a teenager before you went to SUNY Albany, which is acronym for State University of New York at Albany.
Okay, well, I was born November of 1975 in Utica, New York, actually in New Hartford, New York. And I was born and raised in a single, not in a single, but in a married home, um, with two parents, which was very common at the time in the 70s, 80s, and into the early 90s. Um, Now, being the fact that I was raised as an only child, which was not the intent of my mom. I was intended to be the oldest child of two, three, or potentially four. But shortly after I was born, my mom had serious hemorrhaging. And basically, the doctors told her, you're not going to be able to have any more kids immediately after that serious hemorrhaging that she had weeks after I was born. So that was a game changer for me. And so I'm growing up alone. And, did I have many friends? Yeah, I had a few, but I did not have many friends. Um, and it really wasn't until I entered the unseen hand of God portion of my life, which was in the 1990s, which was generally around or after when I got saved, when I really started developing a lot more friendships. I mean, trust me, most of my friendships in the late 70s and through the 80s, very few, if any of them, do I still have.
Hmm.
Um, I mean, really, most of my friendships, you, Kevin, um, Jason Hurwitz, um, Kevin DeValk, um, and just thinking of several other, people, um, you know, I would even go back to Matt DiNardo, who is, who's somebody I have not seen in 20 years. We've had some ups and downs. We had a falling out in 2004, but we have been repatching that over the past year or year and a half or so. And we are getting very close to potentially in 2025 coming back together for the first time in over 20 years. That would be such a huge reunion for me.
Coming back,
And
I mean to interrupt, coming back together,
yeah,
like in other words, you're going to see each other in person for.
I mean, I don't know if that's going to happen. I don't know if I'm going to get the invitation to go to Richmond or not, but if I get that invitation, I'm going. Period. End of story.
Good. Nice. Nice. That's wonderful. Yeah, there's so many blessings that you have. Now, tell us a little bit about Utica, New York. I mean, there are probably people in the United States, let alone other parts of the world, that they've never heard of Utica. They don't know where it is. So tell us about the city of Utica. Just give us a little taste of it, especially through your eyes as a child and a teen.
Well, pretty much Utica, New York is, hey yo, oh hey, how you doing? Hey yo, I mean, you talk about the Italian food there. The Italian food in Utica, New York is one of the best places in the world. Outside of New York City, outside of Italy, you go outside of those two places, the next best place to go for the best Italian food in the world is Utica, New York. Period. End of story.
I could
Better than
vouch for it.
Syracuse, better than Albany, better than any other place in the country besides New York and besides Italy. It's Utica, New York. Period.
I could vouch for that, not to interrupt. I could vouch for that because I've been to Utica with you.
Mm-hmm.
Pizza is primo. Delicioso. Muy rico. You want to speak Spanish here. So,
Yes.
so it's a very much an Italian ethnic neighborhood where there are other ethnic groups. And tell us about the economy and just the neighborhood you grew up in. Just give us paint a picture for us. Pretend we
Okay.
want to travel there.
All right. So the Italian American was a big portion of the area growing up in the late 70s, 80s, and into the early 90s. There was also some Greek, there was also some Polish, there was also some Irish. I mean, basically, those were the main areas of ethnicity at that time. Now, during the 1990s, that was when the humongous Bosnian population began to move in. And then after that, a whole flood of people have moved on in, and Utica went from just a few ethnicities and almost all speaking English to now there's over 30 languages. There is so many, different languages being spoken in Utica. It is absolutely amazing what's going on there. And most of that has just happened in the last 20 to 30 years.
Wow, wow. Now, Utica at one time was a manufacturing city, even when you were younger, from what I remember. Is that correct? Could you tell us
Yes.
a little bit about the economy and the economic dynamics? And I think your father was, your father, he was involved with a civil engineering project when he went to college, designing some of the sub-interstate, I-790, what is it called, the North-South Arterial Highway. So tell us
Yes.
a little bit about the economy in Utica from when you were a child till you were in college.
Yes, so from starting from when before I was born, back in 1969, 1970, there was a road called the extension of the North-South Arterial. Basically went from Horatio Street, just north of Riverside Mall, up over Deerfield Hill and up to South Trenton, and that still exists today. That stretch of highway is over 50 years old. That stretch of highway is one of the most clocked and most ticketed state police areas in the entire country. Period. End of story on that. Nearly every single day that I would travel back and forth on that road, I would see somebody with the state police having somebody pulled over, handing out tickets. I
Mm.
mean, and by the miracle of God, I have not been one of them. Praise God, I have not been one of them.
Thank God. Thank God for that. That's awesome. That was really awesome. So a little bit more about Utica. So that was an industrial city, wasn't it, at one time?
Yes, yes, it was very much an industrial city, and over the years it has become more of a service, more of a service industry, more of a service city, and particularly in the last 5, 10, 15 years has become more of a high-tech city.
Hmm.
Now, Utica was just over 100,000 people in 1950, and that's when the population topped out for Utica in 1950, 1951, 51 to 55, where the population was just over 100,000 people. Then the population started to drop. It dropped through the 90s, 80s, 70s. It dropped all the way down to, in 2010, dropped all the way down to 60, actually in 2000, dropped all the way down to 60,000 people.
Jeez.
So in 50 years, the city of Utica lost 40% of its population. And that was when the United States gained almost double its population. So when the United States is nearly doubling its population, Utica's halving its population. So that's 4 times that. I mean, that was just heartbreaking. And the good news is that the city of Utica is regaining population. We gained a few thousand going into, from 2000 to 2010, and then we gained several thousand. We got back up closer to 70,000. We're probably back up around 70,000 right now, and we're heading north. We're heading in the right direction with that. Where the population goes from here, I honestly have no idea. But with many high-tech industries moving on in, and with the industries being very tough, being very competitive, and with housing being so tight because so many of the homes that are older have burned down or have been taken off the market, and there has not been all that much building over
Hmm.
the last 25 to 50 years just because there hasn't been a whole lot there. The home prices have finally skyrocketed. It took so long for it to happen, but Nevin, over the last 5 to 10 years, particularly over the last 5 years, home prices have gone up 50, 60 plus percent. And you know I just can't imagine how people are going to be able to live there with how prices are rising there so quickly, and how upstate New York has gone from, for decades, one of the most affordable places in the country to now it's not so much.
Yeah, and it's similar to Florida too. Florida used to be very affordable for many, many different reasons that I won't go into for the sake of time. It has become extremely unaffordable. And of course, the wages and salaries have not kept up pace with the cost of housing and many other services down here in Florida, especially Southeast, all over Florida, really, for the most part. Um, Now, moving forward, let's bring us to, I guess we could talk about your high school years. Tell us about your time in Utica Academy. And there were different phases where you really struggled hard. You had a very difficult high school experience. But there were some bright spots, particularly towards the end of your high school career. And again, this is all discussed in varying degrees in Rich's book, Unseen Hand of God. Be sure to purchase it on Amazon. Once this program is recorded and uploaded, I will be putting a link for those of you who want to purchase it. It is very affordable. I do not generally like reading self-help books, with some exceptions. This is one of the best self-help books I have ever read. It is quick, it is well written, it is easy to understand. It is one of the best self-help books I have ever read. So, Rich, continue regarding your time in Utica Academy.
Well, I mean, I don't really know how to follow up on, on that. I mean, certainly thank you for the for the plug for the book, and just for the great, stuff that you had to mention about that. It is so appreciated with that. So basically, where I start off in the book is going into 1991.
Mhm.
This is going into 10th grade, and this is going into sophomore year of high school. This is going into the toughest year of high school. This
Mhm.
is going into one of the toughest years of my life. Not the toughest, but one of the toughest. And, in general, it is bad. Within a couple, within the first few months of, going into sophomore year, I go into a detailed story about how one person, um, walked into the bathroom and saw me doing something that may or may not have happened or should not have done, and then decided um, to make it into a huge thing, into a huge deal, and basically say that because he saw me do this one thing or saw this one thing for a few moments, that I was gay. And this is 1990 going into 1991. So this is 2024 going into 2025. So when you read this, and you're reading something that was happening almost 35 years ago, we're a completely different society then
Mhm.
as compared to now. So you need to really back up, stop for a second, and doubly consider exactly what that meant at that point in time. Being called gay, being, being distraught, being, shelved, being, compartmentalized, being just, okay, no, don't have anything to do with him. Just leave him alone. Just leave him alone. And, just being ostracized like that. That was so hard. That hurt so much. And it happened day after day, week after week, month after month. And then we get to April of 1991, and this is where everything came to a head. And this is where we get to our, we get a couple of days before spring break, and we get to our jazz band concert, which was at the Utica Senior Academy Auditorium. There's over 1,000 people there, and we're playing. We just have such a great time. We're moving, we're grooving. Everyone is having an awesome time. And then Rick Compton, our director, he is still such a good friend of mine to this day. He is still alive and well and doing great. In case you happen to, to want to know or want to reach out to him, he is doing so well. And please reach out to him, say hello, wish him a Merry Christmas or Happy New Year, just because this is about the time of year that that this podcast is, being recorded at, or if it's afterwards, just just give him another well wish or whatever. But anyway, he turns around and he says, "Okay, in that screaming trumpet section, we have Rich Lupia." The audience falls completely silent, completely flat. Over 1,000 people in there, hardly anything. I think there was maybe one or two people clapping,
Oh
and
my.
I think maybe and I think one of them was my dad. And then he said, "All right, well, let's hear it for Chad Van Gorder." And then the whole audience
Yeah.
erupted,
Oh
and
no.
some of them into standing ovation.
Oh Lord. Oh my gosh. Oh man, that's like a sucker punch right there.
That that was the straw that broke the camel's back. That devastated me. I barely could get through the rest of the performance. I had a few choice words for people after the performance, which I needed to ask forgiveness for later, which I definitely needed to. And then just the next day, just, which was the last day before spring break, just going through everything and just not even wanting to say anything, do anything, just, forget it. I don't want to know you. I don't want to do anything. Just forget it. Just get out of here. And then that night, that first night of spring break,
Uh-huh.
I wanted to end my life.
Mm.
And literally for
Mm.
hours,
Mhm.
I was trying to figure out how I wanted to do it.
Mm.
I think I'd figured out how to do it,
Mm.
but I still wasn't 100% sure. And maybe that's the reason why I'm still here to this day, because I wasn't able to figure it out, for hours and just struggling and just crying and just, just the pain of just how bad that moment was at 15 years old, just being all alone and feeling all alone. Just a few weeks prior, my mom had just left to work 5 days a week down in Binghamton. So now it was just dad at the house.
Mhm.
Instead of
Mhm.
my mom, it was just dad. So that made it even worse. And
Well,
and
I
then,
got a question. A
then
couple
it
of
just
follow
took. Yeah.
follow-up questions. Did anybody come up to you? I mean, you said you had some choice words, and I can understand why, certainly, but without going over that aspect, did anybody come up to you and say, "Look, man, I'm so sorry," or even, I'm assuming, obviously, and you don't have to discuss, aside from your family, did anybody come up, Mr. Compton, for example, or others? Like, did they realize what happened? I mean, that is so horrific. And again, the details are going to be in this book. It is quite a struggle that Rich went through, and here he is, God bless. He is here with us today. Anybody come to you for support at all? Any?
No, no. Basically, anyone who came to me afterwards was coming to me looking for an apology. I gave an apology. It was an accepted apology, and then basically we moved on. But trust me, at that point in time, and in the early 1990s, I did not have any room for anything. I did not give much forgiveness at that point in time.
Right. But I'm saying, did people come up and say, because they didn't applaud, and I'm sure they had to see how hurt you were and how, wow.
No, they didn't. No, they
And
didn't.
did Mr. Compton know you were upset even after high school? Did you eventually admit to him how crushed you were?
Oh,
Did
I
you have?
did. I absolutely did, and I have several times in the years, in the years since, and just we have we have learned to get through that, and we have learned that that was one of the worst times of our lives, but that has led to so many blessings, so many great times in the years since that, you know, when you look back at that point in time, it was all worth it.
Yeah, yeah, and it really toughened your armor too, as well as time went on. So thank God you're still with us. You didn't end your life, thank God. Before we move forward, did anybody know at the time or after, even years later, that you were contemplating committing suicide?
Most people did not know that I was committing suicide or, possibly, at least contemplating it until after I was saved. It was really after I was saved that I really felt a lot more free to talk about that. But honestly, beforehand, I didn't really feel too free to talk about that. But
Mm.
really, truly, after I was saved in February of 1993, that was when I really felt like, you know what? I really need to talk about this. And the first time I talked about this was at the end of April of 1993 when I first gave my testimony to my youth group. And that testimony was one of the best nights of my life. Literally, it was one of the top 10 nights of my life. I mean, not much else beats it. I mean, besides being saved, getting married, meeting Amy, and the birth of all of my children, that date is, is right up there, right just after that.
Mm. Now, and we're going to get to that. Now, you had a variety of different hobbies, though, that occupied that you were occupied with, or that occupied your time when you weren't in school. I know different sports and intellectual interests. Did you want to kind of discuss that before we move on? And then I promise we'll move on.
No, that's fine. Bowling and golf were probably the two biggest things that I was involved with. Bowling was something that I got better and better at every year to by the time I got to the end of high school and into college to where I was bowling 160, 170, 180 on an average day with many 200 plus games. And even some days getting up as high as the 230s, 240s, and even one day in 1991, actually it was a couple months after that, in late 1991, I bowled a 258, which was the highest game I had ever bowled. And I have not reached that since. I've come close a couple of times, but never really reached that since.
Yeah, I mean, I could attest to that. Rich was a mean bowler in college. We had so much fun those years.
Yeah.
So now you're down in the dumps. You're contemplating suicide, and you touched on it. But what? Clearly, it was the unseen hand of God that
Yeah.
stopped it.
Yeah,
But
absolutely it was.
so what thoughts did God put in your head? Obviously, you could not figure out how to end your life. Thank God. So what then shifted? There was a point where God made the proverbial light bulb go off in your head. Tell us what happened, because by the end of high school, you had a big turnaround, like a 360-degree turn. What happened?
All right, so basically it's after midnight. I had been sitting up in my room for several hours and I just could not get out of this funk that I was in. And so I decided to throw in a cassette tape. It was Genesis Invisible Touch, and the first song that was open was Throwing It All Away.
Mm.
And that song is one of the most important songs of my life to me because that song literally saved my life because the first time that I listened to it, when I was at that point of suicide, I just started to think, if you go away, you're never going to be able to hear that song again. And in 1991, before I was saved, that would have been correct. I would not have ever been able to hear that song again. But then the second time I played it, after I played it the first time, I was feeling like, you know what? I ought to play it again. So then I played it again. And then all of these weird, unbelievable, positive things just started flowing through me. And that was the unseen hand of God. That was just Him overwhelming me, just overflowing in me to the point to where I just felt so happy, so calm, so relieved, and just like, Rich, you're going to be okay. Just go to bed. You're okay. Just go to bed. And I did. woke up the next morning and I was okay. I have not been at a point of suicide ever since then. In 30 plus years, I have not been at a point of that and never intend to get to a point of that again.
Wow, that is a heck of a testimony right there. So now you have this new spirit, this new literally lease on life.
Mm-hmm.
What was your next day at school like? How did you walk through those doors at Utica Academy?
Well, I mean, I still, had all of the junk that I had with me earlier that year,
Sure.
but I just had a different perspective on everything and got through everything a little bit differently. So I just, I got through as best as I could day by day, week by week. But, it was only just over a month later, it was literally like 5 weeks later, to where I had an incident at a golf course. And the incident was to where I had used my putter, and instead of using the actual putter head, I had used the front of it and had knocked it in like a pool stick, which, believe it or not, actually took a 2-stroke penalty with that, which, believe it or not, actually cost our team the entire match, which took us from winning to losing.
Ooh.
So that was bad. And the next day, Fran let the whole world know about it.
Mm.
And
Could you tell us who Fran is? I remember him, but tell.
yes, I have not seen him in over 30 years. Praise God. I hope I never see him again. But if I do, I do. If I don't, I don't. That'll be fine. But Fran was somebody who he was a friend of mine up until about 7th grade, about 7th, 8th grade. And then he became an enemy, and he became the biggest bully and the biggest enemy for me. And this was one of his biggest times with me. And then we get to this day, and we get to May 16th of 1991. This was a bad day. Now, don't ask me why the 16th are bad days for me, but more on that later. That's actually after the book. That's going to come probably in a future episode for sure. But just say May 16th, that was not such a good day. So, so I'm just going through a very bad day with everything, and then get up into class, towards the end of the day, and it's like 8th period, and somebody made a snide remark, and then Paul said, "Whoa, what about Rich?" And then everyone starts laughing and stuff, and I'm like, that's it. I have had enough. And then I get up, I stand up, and I go towards him and get ready to start fighting him right then and there. And then, the teacher breaks it up immediately, kicks me out of class, kicks Paul out of class, and, says, "Go downstairs, get out of here, get away from here." So I go downstairs into the band room, which just happens to be where Paul goes. So he comes downstairs a few minutes after I come down, and then I just start slamming him. And I take my fist and I punch him in the chest. I punch him so hard, I'm surprised I didn't break his chest.
Mm.
And by the grace of God, he did not punch back.
Mm.
Probably because he knew he had it coming.
Right. Who was Paul, by the way? You mentioned Paul. So Fran is the problem here, but Paul, who is Paul in this whole mix again? Just for the people.
Paul was one of the most popular kids in school at the time, and I have not seen him in a long time. He's still, I believe he's still here. He's still well, and I don't remember seeing him at either the 20th or the 30th reunion, but I believe he's still alive and well. Just just please wish him well. I believe he's doing well and still in upstate New York.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so now we're moving from junior year and now into senior year of high school. What is senior year like? I mean, there's definitely some improvements. I'll let the cat out of the bag a little bit here, but why don't you elaborate on senior year at Utica Academy?
Yes, there was definitely improvements. There was a lot of improvements, with the exception of one day in gym class. There was basically almost nothing in senior year. That was a problem. And
Mm-hmm.
so really I want to back up just a little bit, just to the very end of junior year, to May of 1992.
Okay.
To when I got introduced to Heart Level. The week before, at the just towards Memorial Day weekend of 1992, a good friend of mine, Pete Modi, said, "Hey Rich, there are these friends that I hang out with Wednesday night. You got to come out and hang out with them." So he invites me to Heart Level. So this is the Wednesday after Memorial Day. He brings me there, and I come downstairs. The first person I run into is Chad Yoxel. He looks at me. He hands me a card that says, "Get well, you are missed." I still have that card to this day. I don't know exactly where it is, but I know it's nearby. I know it's up here. As a matter of fact, I believe it's in my other closet as of right now. But he hands it to me and it says, "Hey, you gotta have this to get in, otherwise it costs you $5."
I like him.
And I said, "Boy, this is an interesting place, isn't it?" And so I walk in to the main area, and there's, including me, there's 38 people, 38 high school people in there.
Mm.
And this is like, wow, this is crazy. Okay. I've never been to anything like this before. And Rance comes out and he's like, "Oh!" I mean, he seriously comes out like, like that. I mean, he literally comes out like Tarzan. And he's like, "Let's hear it for the greatest youth group in New York State. Let's hear it for the greatest youth group in the United States, in the world." Yeah! And everyone's going crazy. And he's like, "Yeah, welcome to Heart Level. And as is customary, all new people need to take 3 steps forward, turn around, say your first name, where you're from, and who brought you."
And who is Rance? Just for the background for the audience, again, I know who Rance is.
Rance was the leader of the youth group at that time. Okay. He was the leader of the youth group at that time.
What kind of youth group? Could you?
It was a Christian youth group. It was at a Baptist church.
There we go. Okay, please continue, sir.
So so we do that, and all of a sudden I'm like, "Pete, I'm gonna kill you." Because I'm like, "The heck am I gonna do? This is one of the scariest." I mean, he mentioned nothing about this up until the moment that this was put on me. It's like, what am I gonna do? So it comes my turn, and I get up, I take my 3 steps, I turn, I face the crowd, and I'm like, hi, my name is Rich Lupia. I'm from Utica, and Pete brought me here, I think, to embarrass me. And then, and then, um, and then Rance goes, let's hear it for Rich, yay! And then everyone just absolutely goes crazy. All 38 people just start screaming and just start wowing like crazy. Up until that point in my life, at 16 and a half years old, I had never had that experience in my life until that night. And you talk about just wanting to be there every single week after that. I was hooked that night, and every single week afterwards, I was there. I had a girlfriend almost right away.
Wow.
And
I did not remember that. Wow.
Yeah, I mean, I literally had a girlfriend within a week.
Mhm.
You know, and just it was just an amazing time. And then Rance, coming in, talking to me at different points, different times, getting to know me, just wanting to know more about who, what, where, when, why, and how. And I told him more about me, and he got to know me better. And we continued through the fall of 92 and into the winter of 1993, continuing to get to know each other every single week. And then it came time for the snow camp trip, February of 1993, going out to heart level, going out to snow camp at Circle C Ranch in Delavan, New York. That is 3.5 hours from Utica. That is an hour south of Buffalo. It is the middle of nowhere in western New York. It is high elevation. It is lake effect snow country. It is brutally cold in February. And that is where we went. And that is where I ultimately met the Lord Jesus Christ. On the morning of Saturday, February 13th, 1993, on a very cold but sunny Saturday morning, I went through, I had heard the gospel, I had heard a testimony, and had the invitation to receive Jesus Christ as my Lord and Savior. I had the invitation to pray the prayer, close my eyes, I prayed the prayer, I opened my eyes, and life has never been the same since.
And he has got you through some very difficult patches in your life, which in this series we are going to talk about. Now, you can't imagine how you felt. You just absolutely rejuvenated. Your morale, your spirit, your life has been rejuvenated. God had led you to a group of people that are highly supportive, that are mature, that are compassionate. This goes back to what I've talked about in my writings and my shows. Individualism is very important. We all want to be individuals. That is partially coded in American DNA. However, we also need community. People need community. Nations function better when we act as a community. And so do people. When we feel like we're a part of something, and something is based on altruism, compassion, and strength, such as, in this case, the Christian faith, or you might call it the evangelical Christian faith, or whatever label or denomination you want to put it on. I have friends with many such people, such as you, Kevin DeVolk, and many others in my life that I still remain friends with, you included, obviously. Wonderful people, salt of the earth people. There's no other way to describe it. And you were spiritually thirsty. You were in a desert. And God felt you were special enough to put his hand on you, say, I am picking you. And this book over here, this podcast, all of your word of mouth communications for 20 plus years has been a testament to that. You've been repaying him. And February 13th, 1993, you are rejuvenated. Your morale has done a 360 degree change. You are now part of a community of just absolutely wonderful people. And it showed that God was loyal to you. And this is, of course, very similar to biblical history. These are tests of faith. And you, I think, and I'm not trying to blow smoke, but I think you are possibly destined to be a witness of God, both in print and on audiovisual technology and on a personal level. Maybe that might be a new career for you. I don't know. Or vocation or hobby, or I shouldn't call it a hobby, I would say career, vocation, or probably a better word for it is calling. And just the way your life, even what I have personally witnessed, really adds up to that. This could be a calling for you. But I digress. You're in this community. You're in this fortress of compassion, of altruism, of love, of strength. You're still you're in your senior year in high school. What was the rest of high school like after you were saved?
It was completely different. I mean, the last couple months of high school were completely different. I mean, just being saved changed my perspective on my life. Graduating high school was a completely different perspective on my life. Being featured in the paper the weekend of graduation, along with Danielle Coriel and Jose Aponte, was absolutely amazing. Being 3 out of 537, and being one of the 3 out of 537 being shown as a graduate of the high school. That was absolutely amazing. And then just an absolutely awesome weekend of party after party after party, and just celebrating the accomplishment that I actually made it. I actually graduated high school, and that next up was college. Next up was the University of Albany. And next up was my walk down the path into meteorology.
That's right. So we're coming up to the top of the hour, getting there. And we're going to talk about college, your time at the State University of New York at Albany. We're going to do that in our next show. As I said, I think this is going to be a multi-part series because we have about 30 plus years to cover here.
Yes, and apparently we're taking our good old sweet time to cover it.
Yes, absolutely. We had some interviews before, but we had some major technical difficulties, unfortunately. So far, I think this conversation has been absolutely terrific. I think this has been a great show. Do you have any closing comments about your high school? So it sounds like, I will make this point, it sounds like the kids were a lot nicer. Your fellow classmates were much nicer. You go on all these parties and everything else. So it's like something about you is shining, if you will. Is that an accurate statement, or would you disagree with that?
I definitely think that there was some change with me. Whereas a lot of people were much more likely to, to judge me or to, against me. Now they're much more likely to accept me. They're much more likely to want me around. They're much more likely to say, "Hey, come on over." I mean, I remember last year with the 30-year reunion that we had, that was just absolutely amazing. I mean, that was a great weekend. Was it a top 10 weekend of my life? No, but it was close. Um, it wasn't quite there, but it was definitely close. And I definitely agree that once I got saved, and particularly after I got saved, and in the years since then, um, my high school relationships, particularly with all the people that I went to high school with, are so much better than they were when I was in high school and even before, for
Mhm.
sure.
Amen. That you see, and that is an awesome testimony. And this is perfect before the Christmas holiday too, as well. This is a
Mhm.
perfect story. Alone, this transformation is absolutely incredible. I know I'm biased. He's my close friend for 30 plus years. Please order this book. Check it out. I read it as soon as Rich had it published. An amazing book. An amazing book. A lot of love and a lot of effort was put into it. It's not this thick, boring, kind of like Dr. Phil or whatever type of book. See, it's thin, it's quick read, extremely readable. It's not wordy like I am with my academic works like ba 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 ba. No.
No, it's about a 4 hour read, maybe a 5 hour read, just to go through from cover to cover. And, you know, you'll be able to get the most out of it if you have an afternoon or if you have an evening just to sit and just to go through it from cover to cover. You will absolutely enjoy it. You'll absolutely enjoy it.
Take
Arnold.
it from me. I generally don't read self-help books. It's not my lodestar. It's not my preference. Not hating on self-help books. It's not bad. Everything, everybody, it's a different thing. Different strokes for different folks. Obviously, to quote the old series, different strokes from both of our childhoods way back when, but from the late 1970s into the 1980s. But the bottom line is it's an amazing book, amazing story too as well. Rich, do you have any closing comments before we wrap up for this session?
No, part one, I believe, is done. Um, this has been so good. I appreciate you letting me give some background as to me being born and raised in Utica, New York. I appreciate you letting me go into at least the first couple chapters of my book. And in the next couple parts of the series, I'm looking forward to going through the rest of the book and then getting closer to today and then what's happening in the future. I'm looking forward to this multi-part series, and thank you so much for having me on.
Thank you for joining us, Rich. I really appreciate it. Maybe this might be a new direction for my podcast too, as well, where I might diversify, so to speak, my portfolio. As I'm thinking about this, I genuinely enjoy this conversation. It's very uplifting, and that's something maybe we can talk about in the coming weeks, if not months. Thank you all, everyone. God bless. God bless America. Be kind and good to one another. Merry Christmas. Yes, on this show, you say Happy Hanukkah. Merry Christmas, New Year.
Happy Hanukkah.
May I, Happy Hanukkah, Merry Christmas. I have no hate for Kwanzaa, whatever. We recognize all these holidays and we're not shy about saying things like
Happy New
Merry Christmas,
Year.
Merry Christmas, and Happy New Year, everybody. Happy Hanukkah, Happy Happy, happy, happy. So thank you all for joining us on this very uplifting program. Take care. Be safe. Bye-bye.